So let me just begin by saying thank you, Marcus, for attending here, Mr. Miller. I want to give a big shout out to Supply Chain and Sustainability Summit for asking me to participate. This session is really about you, Marcus, and about your background. But before I begin, I just want to give a nice shout out to Loyola University, and shout out to three key individuals that asked me to participate today, which is John Caltagirone, Michael Hewitt, and Magic Nowak. I'm a student at Loyola University. I started last July in the executive MBA program. My background, I've been in the technology industry for 33 years as an individual contributor. And I think the leadership at Loyola tagged me to participate today. So that's my background for the group. And Marcus, again, thank you for being here. We're honored. I think your background and your leadership and vision in this area is amazing. We had a chance to meet about a month and a half ago. We had about an hour conversation. And I walked away with my chin to the floor saying, wow, I learned a tremendous amount from you. Your present role today, well, you know what, I'm going to stop and let you introduce yourself, and then then I'll kick it back over to me. All right?
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Well, first I want to also say thank you to Loyola University Chicago and to the team that put together this Supply Chain and Sustainability Summit. I'm really honored to be here participating, especially given the unique role that I play and what I believe the future holds for us from a sustainability and a supply chain management perspective. I am currently the Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Chicago. I'm the first Chief Diversity Officer the city ever had. I was hired by the Emanuel administration, so I started in April of 2018, and I was and continue to be focused primarily on workforce diversity and on thinking about ways that what I call standard issue diversity and inclusion can benefit the city and convert us into an employer of choice. I also bring with me some what I would argue is subject matter expertise in the area of diverse business enablement. I spent 7 years as the head of field operations for the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And so in doing so, have been a partner with our Department of Procurement Services, with our Chief Small Business Officer, Kenya Merritt, and all other parties at the City of Chicago, thinking about ways that we can continue to promote inclusiveness and diversity. When Mayor Lightfoot was elected, and then upon her inauguration, she announced the creation of an Office of Equity and Racial Justice, where I am a member of that team and working with our new, well, not new because she's now 2 years old, but our Chief Equity Officer, Candace Moore, who brought a wealth of expertise around what it meant to have equity, especially racial equity, in a city like Chicago. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing has been to undergird our efforts to create a framework for racial equity, sewing equity into standard issue diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what I've done is create an add-on to my initial model, which was a what I'll call traditional DEI model, to create what we call today more of a idea or inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility model. So I'm excited about being here to share some information, answer some questions, and see how we can work more collaboratively to focus on being undivided in our efforts to create the environment that we want and the communities that we want for all of us.
Excellent, Marcus, for that synopsis. You know, I recently saw on the mayor's website this new slogan called IDEA, and it's kind of it's perfect. It leads right into the month of October is the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And the theme is America's recovery, and it's empowered by diversity, equity, inclusion. So adding the accessibility to that just really empowers the idea of your program and your efforts in the city. You know, I had a chance to understand you and speak with you earlier last month, and you gave a broad background of your history and your expertise in this matter. And you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and sustainability has been an issue in the boardroom. It's been an issue with hiring practices. And you know, you've got an important job in the city of Chicago, and you run kind of the executive strategy for the organization. And I say organization because I think many instances the public feels government is more of a service, and you came at it. The discussion with you is that we're really a business, and we do a lot more than just provide services. And I thought that was a great segue to share with your mindset of how you manage the operations of a business and the operations of the service of government. So could you elaborate further on that for the group?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, Chris. My approach was primarily driven by what I saw as the appropriate approach for us, given our framework need around creating more inclusion and diversity in government. In fact, as we entered into Mayor Lightfoot's administration, and as I joined the Office of Equity and Racial Justice in January of 2020, one of the things that was clear is while we have always focused our efforts as not just being a government, but actually being a municipal corporation, what we had to realize is we had some of the same processes as private sector businesses in that, you know, we generate revenue through our water management process, through our use of the airport and the fees that are generated by the users at the airport. But we also provide grants to organizations that deliver services for us, because as a business that operates to deliver high quality government services, we're trying to operate in as lean and as efficient a way as possible. And so we provide contracts to what we call delegate agencies who deliver services for us, because we don't have the staff or the bandwidth to do so. And some of that also extended to our work with small businesses, as well as the kinds of programs and projects that we've taken on, both in terms of our work with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, our Chief Small Business Officer in the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, but then also in the work that we do through the Department of Human Resources around workforce development, and finally, the Offices of Equity and Racial Justice, because to establish what it means to have racial equity, we have to first develop the muscle that's necessary to start the conversations around what equity means, to clarify for people the difference between equity and equality, but then also to think about how we have to operate in a way that normalizes these conversations, and then organizes them in a way that allow us to continue to deliver high quality services that have equity at the center, and also ultimately to operationalize them so that we're doing things that are beneficial to all communities and not just a select few.
Yeah, so you touched on some great points here that I'd love to elaborate on for more fully. Obviously, the pandemic of last year and some of the capital projects that were put on hold, the planning and the workforce development process, and then subsequently the city's study, the disparity study that went forth. And I felt like that it was almost a time for reset, where greater certifications and success for minority women-owned business enterprises programs to reinvigorate the business platforms in the city. And I know you're instrumental in that and driving your vision toward those internal systems and processes. And maybe you can just elaborate further about the study and about attracting businesses to Chicago.
So you were actually asking two questions in one, Chris, which is great because a lot of people weren't as clear about why the city needed to do a disparity study. The disparity study is primarily framed around the city's work on construction and a historic relationship that we've had to develop with contractors, primarily those prime construction contractors throughout the city who were concerned about the approach we were taking to providing access to opportunity for minority and women-owned businesses. We conducted this disparity study to further demonstrate that there's still not enough equity and opportunity. There's not enough diversity in terms of the mix of subcontractors. And we had to, based on a pioneer court case that took place in the 1990s, to essentially every 5 to 7 years, reauthorize a program for minority and women-owned businesses that is very similar to the kind of third-party certification process that corporations and several of the folks on this webinar are probably familiar with. So we instituted a MWBE strategy. We incorporated a aspirational goal set of 26% minority and women-owned businesses. 26% minority-owned businesses, 6% women-owned businesses that we were able to get City Council to approve. We were able to get relative unanimity on it from the contractor community, and then start to build in some additional aspects of what it meant to encourage more firms to certify through the city, but more importantly, to be available to do business with the city on several of these contracts. And again, to further amplify and accentuate this significance of this study, because it's focused on construction, and you touched on a really important point a moment ago, Chris, the approach we have to take with our capital plan, given that all of us are maniacally focused on seeing the city recover economically from this devastating pandemic, we started to look at how we could find ways to integrate more businesses. And the good news is that's a process that's underway. We're excited about the fact that we have a new Chief Procurement Officer, Eileen Velasquez, who comes to us with a wealth of experience in corporate or private sector supplier diversity. But also some of the things that were recommended in the study, which I believe is available to the public and posted on the city's website under the Department of Procurement Services, to see that the economic recovery is not going to be solely driven by what the city does or what the city spends. It's going to be accomplished as much by creating opportunity for all businesses to participate, not just in city contracts, but also to find ways to do business with each other in the private sector. There are several aspects of this that involve some really creative ideas about financing, providing access to capital, because construction is very capital intensive, as you certainly know. And for those who are participating today, who are involved in construction projects, you know that it's not always easy to identify firms that bring the kind of capability and capacity to do the work, in addition to some of the standard barriers to entry, like bonding, as well as plain old simple development and understanding of the marketplace. But some of the things that we're focused on include being able to have larger firms participate, raising the public, the personal net worth cap, so that the firms don't end up graduating out of the program, because one of the most important things that we see from an economic development standpoint is the ability for these firms to put people to work, to return those individuals to the tax-paying roles, if you will, and then ultimately starting to see that economic impact benefit communities, because whenever you are able to put people to work, they're able to provide funding to their family members to spend in the communities that they live in, as well as all other communities around the city. And then as a final point, we were looking at ways to also, not from a zero-sum standpoint, but from a rising tide raises all boats perspective, find ways to increase the number of prime contract awards to minority and women-owned businesses. We think that this process, which we are looking forward to getting initiated when we get the 2022 budget approved, is going to have a dramatic impact on what we're able to do in reaching out to the community to find more of the businesses available to do business with the city, but also in working with more of the partners that we have through World Business Chicago, through the Chicagoland Chamber, as well as all of the other companies that look forward to doing business with the city.
Excellent, Marcus. I do have a question in the question panel here, and I'll paraphrase the question. It appears that the government and the private sector need to do better cooperation together to attract and to retain, top talent. And how is the city doing that? Is it just job postings? Is it job fairs? Is it better cooperation with line of businesses?
That's an excellent question. And the answer, believe it or not, is all of the above. For those who are interested observers and pay a lot of attention to what the city does, they are very familiar with our oversight from the Office of the Inspector General, who replaced a federal monitor about 10 years ago in the Shackman decision. Shackman has created an environment where we are continuing to focus on fair and impartial hiring, but that fair and impartial hiring does not preclude us from taking some proactive measures like participating in job fairs, like organizing activities with professional organizations, in addition to doing things like providing greater access to opportunity for those who are seeking employment with the city. We have a variety of positions. We're ramping up now for the next budget cycle. And we are also in the process of finalizing an amendment to what we call formally our hiring plan. We're calling it a hiring plan 1.5 toward a hiring plan 2.0, because the hiring plan necessarily provided some, I'll call them governors, that would not allow for us to do some of the things that people would have believed to be unfair and impartial, but partial, but to also focus on where is the greatest need going to be, and then how do we now contemporize that need so that we can address things like what our Department of Public Health did during the crisis. Some really creative ways to bring some employees in to take advantage of the funding that was coming to us in the form of relief. And if I might add, the American Relief Plan, those dollars that we are looking to see come into the city, they're going to necessitate us hiring a whole nother level of professionals that are going to help us with a variety of things, including some of what I mentioned at the outset, the ability to better coordinate with community organizations, with delegate agencies who are going to deliver services on the city's behalf. I mean, there's a list of things that is so long that it's almost better that, if anyone wants more specific and precise information, I can certainly provide that to them offline.
Oh, perfect. I do have another question in the chat window or the Q&A panel that I see. And I'll paraphrase it here is, how is it easier or harder to engage diversity, equity, inclusion efforts in city government than it would be in the private corporation? And you're uniquely equipped to answer this question due to your background. I'm excited to hear this one.
So I'm not sure that I would characterize either of them as easy, simply because what we found, and when I came into my role, was government becoming more aware of the need to be focused on diversity and inclusion, almost in alignment with the corporate or private sector, because of all of the research from McKinsey to Rand and others, Gallup, who all said firms that are more diverse and more inclusive drive greater outcomes, greater returns on investment. One of the things that we did upon the establishment of the Office of Equity and Racial Justice is to get involved in an organization called GARE, which stands for Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which has helped us create an organization or coalition, if you will, of cities around what it means to have diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, we've added accessibility. And for me, the accessibility has been both access to opportunity, but also ability in creating fewer barriers to opportunity for people with disabilities. And in that sense alone, I would argue that if there is any perception that it's harder in government, it's largely because we are far more participatory in our approach, given that we have, of course, 50 wards in the city of Chicago with aldermen who are elected by their group of constituents. We have a mayor who is absolutely and positively committed and has run her entire election campaign on being more equitable as a city. We also have incorporated more community engagement than most of the previous administrations combined. I don't have a problem with saying that because we have an Office of Community Engagement that has created neighborhood engagement, that has created engagement with organizations that are based around diverse identities. We also have our own efforts in our Office of Equity and Racial Justice, where we were focused on both COVID relief, as well as on how now are we going to promote racial healing after last summer's racial unrest, and what seems to be a continuing reckoning around what it means to truly have equity. All of that in combination means that our processes move slower than corporations, but not necessarily that much slower. I often joke about with some of my colleagues who are in the private sector that the CEO of Northern Trust or the CEO of McDonald's can say, we're going this direction and everybody's going to follow. And more often than not, it happens. With us, we usually have the mayor say, this is what we need to do. And we get buy-in from the public because everything that we do is funded by the public. We do pay attention to the kinds of things that the private sector also pays attention to. And I would say that because we don't have shareholders, but have stakeholders, there's probably not that much difference. But I can admit to you that change comes a little bit slower here because we don't really have the ability to say, daggone it, this is what we're going to do, and I don't care what anybody says. It doesn't work like that in government.
Right, right. Well, you touched on some great points here, especially the issue that happened last summer in Minneapolis. Um, the improvements this country has to make are great. The improvements that large cities with large demographics um, need to be open, and I believe in my heart that we're such a great country that we can overcome many of these challenges. But more specific to the city is, how does the city monitor and manage and measure the success of all this stuff? I mean, there's just so much information and so many programs, and how do you do it? How do you manage it all and monitor it and measure it and then report on it? Those are so critical. I hear those words in my professional career all the time, and I don't have any experience in the public sector, and I wonder how you accomplish it all.
Well, we're not trying to eat the elephant, if you will, in one bite. We're biting off pieces all day, every day. In some instances, by mimicking the private sector through some work that you call today supplier diversity on the procurement side. We call it more of a diverse business enablement because what we're trying to do is encourage businesses to participate with the city on city projects because they're publicly funded. And based on that alone, we want to ensure that there are equitable opportunities. We don't try to guarantee outcomes. What we do try to do is make sure that people are aware of the opportunities that exist and have every conceivable chance to participate. That's really more about equity rather than equality. But also on the human capital side, we're doing things like we are in the process of building 2 pilots for engaging employees through employee resource groups. These are some best practices, if not next practices, that we believe help to not only make us better from a delivery of services to each of our respective communities, but also to get more ideas and to develop more innovation, such that with many of the folks that are participating in this webinar really focused on how do we measure success. We're going to be measuring success by levels of participation. With the disparity study in particular, we have some hard metrics that exist around the availability of primes and subcontractors to participate in city contracts, but also in the utility, because we want to ensure that as we have these aspirational goals, we actually are promoting the opportunity to participate in these projects so that we see more firms not only make themselves available, but also are more engaged in projects, especially as these projects roll out. We've got roughly, if you include the airport, roughly $12 billion in capital projects between now and 2025.
Wow.
And so, that's a lot of opportunity for firms that have regrettably not had as easy a time accessing those opportunities. So from a metrics perspective, we're going to be establishing metrics that are going to be very specific, not just to the way things have always been, but to the way we believe things should be, because this experience we're having as a result of the pandemic, as a result of our involvement with GARE, has really started to show us that you can have equity and you can have racial equity, and it doesn't take away from the ultimate goal of delivering services to all communities. In fact, there's an academic theme that is called targeted universalism that says when you do things that benefit communities that have been impacted by race, you typically benefit all communities, as well as communities that have been impacted, like, for example, the community of disabled professionals. There are a number of those kinds of things that we are working on, and it's a very exciting time to be working on.
Outstanding. We've got about 3 minutes left. I've got one more question in the queue, and I'll summarize the question. Marcus, are there any unique challenges that the city of Chicago faces respect to other cities, major cities with diversity, equity, inclusion?
There are, and they're very simply the unique racial dynamics of the city. There's no surprise that we have had hypersegregation in the city for a number of years. We know that that's not something that we can do away with overnight, but there are some initiatives that we've taken into account. The mayor's got a signature example of that with the Invest Southwest initiative that's designed to address decades of disinvestment in South and West side communities. We've got a number of projects that are going to focus on what we call prompt payment, because we want subcontractors to get paid by their primes, and we want the primes to get paid promptly. These are the kinds of things that other large cities, Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles, all deal with. Their approaches are different because their dynamics are different. And without spending way too much time focusing on the enduring significance of race, it is appropriate to say that one of the things that makes Chicago great is the commitment that our communities have made to be active participants in their benefit. This level of unprecedented community engagement, and it's not even as good as it will be, I think is going to be an absolute benefit to us as we look at how we're going to recover economically, how we're going to get more individuals, more businesses, more business owners engaged in what a truly equitable city looks like, and how we can continue to make Chicago and keep Chicago one of the best large cities in America, proudly named 5 years in a row by Condé Nast.
Wow.
As I said, it's an exciting time to be participating, and I can't thank you enough for the chance to be here with you today.
Well, I was just alerted by the leadership team. We've got to the bottom of the hour, so I might have spoken too soon, Marcus. So there are a couple more questions in the queue. So I'm going to, again, kind of run through them here.
Right, let's get with it.
Okay. What do you think the future of Chicago looks like with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I'm going to add accessibility.
Well, you brought up a point a moment ago about October being National Disability Employment Awareness Month.
Yes.
We've got a great partner in Commissioner Rachel Arfa, who heads the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. She's been working very closely with me on establishing a disability-focused employee resource group, which you might not think really addresses the question, but you have to stop and think about this almost insignificant thing that is absolutely the most significant aspect of that we deal with every day. That is, we have a residency requirement for city employees. Some, depending on who you ask, think that that's a barrier. But I would argue it absolutely causes us to be stronger in our approach to delivering services, because what happens with our employees also happens in community and vice versa. What happens in community and the way we deliver services also impacts our employees. So we have the opportunity to create an unprecedented level of buy-in, engagement, and hands-on activity for the kinds of things that are going to make Chicago stronger and even more economically significant as one of the largest cities in the world, a truly global city.
Yeah, for sure. Another question that's come in here is, how often and how frequent and in what ways do you collaborate with the state of Illinois?
That's a great question. We've done some collaboration with the state. I can tell you practically, as we launched our GARE initiative, we actually did a fireside chat with Mayor Lightfoot, also with Lieutenant Governor Stratton, because the governor himself was not available. But then also because we share a building with Cook County, we included Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, and actually talked about what it meant to have the kind of alignment that probably doesn't happen in a lot of places. We have a very important, and I would argue unique partnership with all of those government entities. We play nicely together most days, but from a specific supply chain standpoint, one of the things that we do is, because we have a certification process with the city, there is reciprocity between the state and the city. We're going to be looking at that as part of the work that our new Chief Procurement Officer is going to engage in. We're going to be putting some new processes in place to also further amplify the partnership we have with Cook County. Right now, we've got about 3,000 plus certified minority, women-owned, veteran-owned, people with disability-owned businesses that we actually share with Cook County, as well as businesses that are actually located in the 6 collar counties.
Mm-hmm.
Final point, one of the things that we're looking at that is going to, I think, provide even greater breakthrough is the new Chief Procurement Officer is going to be working within this new budget, fingers and toes crossed, to create an Office of Contracting Equity that's going to look at a variety of ways that we can ensure that more businesses have a chance to participate in city contracts, but at the same time, take advantage of the mayor's executive order from March of 2021, which encourages businesses seeking to do business with the city, as well as those that are not doing business with the city, but doing business within the city, to actually report their use of subcontractors, because the kind of metrics we want to establish are the kind that are going to hopefully drive better outcomes. And, working with our colleagues at the state, the BEP program within the state, the talented individual who has been working in that, and the collection of professionals there, we have some collaboration with them. I've been in some conversations with the Chief Equity Officer for the state of Illinois, as well as the Chief Equity Officer for Cook County.
Mm-hmm.
Have regular correspondence around several of the issues that are plaguing us, in addition to those things that we think are going to provide impact, because we're also in competition with other markets for businesses and business development.
Wow. I know we're coming down the bottom of the hour. You're an amazing individual, Marcus. I'm just thrilled to get the chance to know you here. Our participants here on the call, if you could give your leadership or advice or a takeaway that could improve our participants' lives going forward. It could be one small nugget of information. It could be a book to read. It could be, get involved. I'd love to know a takeaway you can give these participants that have spent time with us today to enhance their lives. What would it be? I know it's a loaded question, and I know you could talk for hours on it, but I think you're just a super individual to lead the role you're in, and you could advise people going forward.
Well, I will give 3, I hope, very pointed items that hopefully people take away and find useful. One is, it's been said, and I think it was Peter Drucker that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. However, strategy is what moves supply chains to a place where they are not an afterthought, but they're actually at the forefront of the company's outcomes when it enters into new markets. There's a real value to being truly strategic. And for anybody on this call that aspires to be a chief procurement officer, don't overlook the need to present ways to be strategic and to provide more innovation, because it's that innovation that's going to drive the new ideas that are going to move the supply chains forward. And especially in this day and age, innovation is going to play a significant role. That's one. Number two, you've got to be a remixer in that a lot of times, and this goes back to the early conversation we had with Mike Hewitt around the transition from transportation and logistics to materials management to supply chain, thinking about it in sum total, what it means to move from a focus on things stored in warehouses to the vaunted just-in-time that the vaulted Walmart to the top of the retail chain establishment, and what the transitions are going to look like as we think about some of the challenges we're faced with today. You know, all you have to do is read the newspaper and see that a stack of ships and a lack of people to unload those ships and a lack of people to drive the products from those docks to their destination is going to change the work that we do. And so thinking about how to shift thinking around that and to remix with what I call some entrepreneur support organizations that can provide some innovative solutions. It's the lesson that we've tried for the last decade to tell minority businesses and women-owned businesses as well. You have to be able to do one of three things: either help the company make money, help them save money, or give them a solution that's so innovative that it gives them a competitive advantage. The same holds true for people that are working in supply chain. And then last but not least, if you happen to be a resident of the city of Chicago, there are so many opportunities for you to engage in community organizations, not just from a volunteer and philanthropy standpoint, but from a what is it going to take to have a truly equitable organization. If you're interested in this at all, and you really are looking to make a difference where you are employed as well as where you live, we've got a lot of information on our website. If you go to chicago.gov/equity, you'll find a number of tools, information, readings, and ideas that will help you with encounters, discussions, conversations around what we've experienced over the last 18 to 20 months and what we are likely to experience going forward. So I hope those things are going to be helpful.
Outstanding, Mr. Miller. I hope you don't, when I call you Mr. Miller, you don't think I'm too formal here, but I love to hear your thoughts and your comments and your vision. And so that ends this briefing here. I would like to welcome Mr. Mike Hewitt to the video.